Well, hi everyone, it's Peter Crewe-Brown here, and welcome to another episode of the Mind Over Matters podcast by Pair Planning. The topic for today is winning high-value clients on a small marketing budget with Mike Ames from Flair Growth Consultancy. Mike Ames could probably be classed as a serial entrepreneur. He started his first recruitment business in 1989. Since then, he has grown and sold two multi-million-pound IT service businesses. He now runs the growth consultancy called Flair, and as I understand it, Mike has just launched his third recruitment company. Today, we're going to talk about why high-value clients are difficult to win and why they are widely targeted by people who do what you do. In this podcast, Mike will outline a simple strategy to get the attention of these highly sought-after prospects and how to begin a commercial dialogue with them. All this can be achieved on a tiny marketing budget. So Mike, please share with the audience what makes you tick and who in the business community do you serve?
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction, Peter, and thank you for having me on the show. Delighted to be here. I mostly serve recruitment firms. Probably 80% of our clients are recruiters for obvious reasons. But what makes me tick is an interesting question, really. I really like organization. I really like seeing a difference when you do things. I've always enjoyed taking a tool, say a software product or something, and figuring out how to use it and then using and then seeing an effect. I like the effect. So when I work with companies, I really like the effect of seeing someone that's not in control of how their business grows, gradually over time becoming in control of how their business grows so they can win the kind of clients that they want. And do you know what? I've been doing this for years now and I still get a buzz out of that, Peter. I still love it.
So were you an early adopter of technology?
I took a degree in computer science in the 80s. Late 70s, early 80s, and so graduated 82. So I've always loved IT. I just love it, really. I love everything about it. Of course, I mean, I used to write programs and various things, but I can't do any of that now. In fact, if the computer goes wrong, Mrs. Ames has to come in and fix it for me. But I've always loved technology, never been afraid of it. And when I was at university, it was drilled into us is don't do something because you can, do something because you need to. In other words, use technology, not just because you're using technology, but use it to achieve something. And that's always stuck with me all the way through. So yes, I absolutely love it. Everything. Bring it on.
Excellent. And to the second part of the question, who do you specifically focus your services on?
Recruiters mainly, recruiters predominantly.
That's
80% of
that's an
SMEs
you've worked in for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, because my background is in that, and that to grow and sell a business in the UK, a recruitment business, and sell it for for retirement money, only 0.2% of recruitment companies do that, and I've done it twice. So. And that's not a boasty thing. I'm just saying that's the way it is because there's a certain way of doing it, and if you know how to do it, then you can share it, and that's what I do.
And so you're going for number 3.
Well, it was a bit of fun, really. Someone approached me about being a non-exec director, really, and then it just kind of, I said, well, all right then, and then kind of went forward, and then it just became clear that he wanted a partner, really. So I took a stake. I'm not really active in the business, I haven't got the time for it, really, but I help him, and we're going to do some things with it. It's going to be interesting, bit of fun, really. Great way to close my career down, perhaps. Third time lucky, third time luckier.
Yeah, Mike, I can't resist asking you. I know that you in the dead of winter in central UK, and I notice you've got a slightly Hawaiian shirt on. You might just share with the audience where that comes from and what you've got in mind.
Well, I did this for you, actually, Peter, because it's the summer there, and I didn't want to be coming on with a woolly jumper or anything, so I turned the heating on early and put this on. Mrs. Ames, we've got a kind of a dressing room at home, and there's like this kind of thing in there, and she'd been sorting my shirts out basically, and I'm not sure whether this was to be taken to the charity shop pile or not, but it was on the top, and I thought, you know what, I think I'll just wear that. So I whacked it on this morning, and here I am. She'll probably come down later and say, you can get that off. That's going to the charity shop. I love it. If only the listeners, could see it, it'd be marvelous, wouldn't it?
Fantastic. Mike, I've got a number of questions, and I'll just start with the first one. In the, I guess, the headline for today's episode, we talk about high-value clients. How do you define a high-value client?
Well, there's different ways to look at this, really. I mean, one simple way, if you just want to do it on money, is to print off your sales ledger from last year, all your clients, and then plot them all on a graph in terms of how much you made from them, the annual revenue that you got from them. And you'll obviously get some sort of bell curve, I would think. It depends. Sure. I mean, I suppose it might be different shapes, but the top 25 to 30% of that are your high value clients if you just do it on money. But actually, there's more to it than that, really. And you can quite often have, well, I'll tell you a story, actually. Years ago, when I ran the first business, a recruitment business, and my business partner came to me one day and said, "Oh, I've got a bit of a problem, Mike. I won't mention the name of the company. It was a well-known chocolate company in the UK. He said, I don't think we make any money on XYZ. And I said, well, that's ludicrous. We're doing £3 million turnover with them a year. That cannot be right. So he basically went through the numbers with me, and sure enough, we were making 2 bob and a conker. We were making no money at all. And because what happens is, quite often with bigger companies, is the margins slip down gradually. They never go up, do they? They slip down.
Sure.
But the service levels, if anything, have to go up. And we've reached that point where we were investing more into it than we were getting out of it. So, and the reason I mention that is that one of the big bear traps that people can fall into is believing that high volume equals high value. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, it doesn't. It's the opposite. What you should aim for is somewhere, where they're an ideal client in terms of you being able to satisfy their needs. Why take on some piece of work that you're not really very good at? So there has to be a match between the needs of the client and what you provide. Okay, tick that box. There are some things you might, I don't know if in Australia you have a thing called an ICP, ideal client profile. Yeah, okay, right. So most ICPs are made up of the corporate ones, are sort of 7 criteria, really, or criterion. So typically, if I can remember them all, so sector, the sector that you work in, location is quite important, size, either measured in number of employees or turnover, their suppliership. So do they have a preferred supplier, or how do you actually sell to them? Then you would have something like average order value, perhaps, so you're looking for people that buy a certain amount from you, and frequency of purchase. I don't know whether that's 7 or not, but it's that kind of thing. They're very specific. Most of that you can get from the internet. Sure. And then the rest of it, you have to kind of engage with the client to find that data out. And I think that's fine. People have been doing that for years. But for me, a high value client is all of that. Obviously, you need a match to what you sell, and all those things need to be the right thing for you. But the person that you deal with, and don't forget, in any kind of company, you get 2 roles. You get the decision maker, usually the one that signs it off with the money and the authorization, and you get the actual user of the service. So quite often, if you deal with smaller companies, they're often the same person, obviously. Yeah. But you need to have a relationship with them so that the people that you do best with, or at least I do best with, are the ones that value a relationship. They've got an element of loyalty. Sure. So they like to deal with you. They like you. They help you. They're there with you. If you drop the baton, as we all do, they bend down with you and pick it up. They don't wait till you're bending over and kick you up the ass. So they're with you, basically. What we say in the UK is they buy you, they don't rent you, right? So these are the guys that you want. They value as well. They don't want to get the top service and pay the minimum for it. They understand, although cost is always an issue, of course, but they understand they have to pay to get the service, and they're okay with that, right? These, to me, are high-value clients. So you've got this 2 level. The bottom one is, does it tick the boxes? Yes or no? It's fairly straightforward. Okay, it does. Now, they should be a good client. Now let's dig deeper and make sure that the person I'm dealing with, whether it's a decision maker or whether it's a distributor or user of the service that you sell, are they the kind of people that I can really get on with and I can work with? And those are the ones that build empires. So my first business, we finished up with a turnover revenues of 40 million quid. So it was a decade, took us to do that.
It's a sizable company.
Yeah, it was sizable. And in today's money, that's like 65, 70 million quid.
Sure.
This was in the 90s, obviously. Mm-hmm. Right. And how did we do that? Well, we did it because we surrounded ourselves with a client estate where people were like this. So yeah, they ticked all the boxes, you know, they did all the things that we wanted, but actually the people that we dealt with really valued us. And because what that gives you is an edge. You go to the casino, I'm not a gambler, but you go to the casino only has a slight edge, you know, it just has a slight edge.
Yeah.
But that slight edge is enough to generate a lot of money. And it's the same in business.
Yeah.
If you've got a slight edge over the competition, that's all you need really to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you install as well, I know we're not going to talk about it today, but if you install an extreme client care system that gets you to number one choice and keeps you there, then it's harder not to make money than it is to make money in a big way. Is what I think.
I like that phrase. I've not heard it before. Extreme client care. It resonates when I hear it.
You see,
those words.
The thing is that most people's client care, weirdly, they talk to the client where they're either looking for an opportunity, they're working on an opportunity, or there's a problem. That's pretty much it, really. And their version of client care is that.
Yeah.
Client care is what you do when there's no work. That's how you interact and support and talk to people and converse with them and add value to them when there's no work. That's what defines client care. And in the UK, particularly recruitment, they just don't do it because of the tyranny of the targets at the end of the month. They're focused on making money. So if you're not going to buy from me this month, I'm not going to talk to you, you know. So anyway, I know we're not talking about client care, but that's extreme client care to put you and keep you at number one choice of suppliers.
Yeah, excellent. Mike, just moving along, the second question I have is, we all know that these prospects are hard to win. What obstacles stop us from winning these clients?
Well, I think we probably all know the answer to that, don't we, really? I mean, I think just to list, I tell you that when, if you cold call, right, so supposing you cold call, what you're actually looking for there is an opportunity. That's the point of it. Whatever you do, whatever you sell, you're looking for an opportunity to do some business. And so the deal is you're looking for an opportunity first, and then perhaps you can turn that company into a client. Opportunity first, client second.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is the kind of people that answer the telephone, listen to your spiel, and then say, yeah, of course, here's a chance. And there are some out there that do that, you know. It's not my thing, but people do that. Those kind of clients, in my mind, aren't high value, because high value clients, as I said, have got a certain amount of loyalty. And if all it takes is a slick salesman to give them some spiel to get some business and not go to you, that's not very loyal, really. Flip it around, that loyal high value clients are happy with their supplier base. They invest in them, they like them, they interact with them, they're supported by them. Are they really going to give you an opportunity on a cold call? Really? I don't think so. No. So the first thing is you've got people who are resistive. That's the first obstacle. They've already got suppliers.
Yeah.
This is a high value client stuff, right? So they've already got suppliers. They're working with them. They're okay with them. Why would they want you? The second one is many of these people are terribly well protected, you know, and I don't just mean with a gatekeeper. I mean, I'm only a very small company. There's 4 of us in Flair. But if you rang our number, you wouldn't get me. You'd get Melanie, my PA. Well, good luck trying to get through her unless you want to buy something from me. Sure. Because she just, her job is to keep people who are trying to sell me things away from me. Normally SEO for some reason. And if SEO is so good, why are you on the telephone? Anyway, but it's a real, there is a real difficulty getting through that shell. You're talking about email spam checkers and firewalls and voicemails and gatekeepers, all of these things designed to stop you from putting your proposition in front of someone. And then even if you do get through, many times if there isn't a need, if they don't have a need now, why would they talk to you? They're like really busy people and they've got a million things going on in their business, and they're going to talk to you about something that they don't want to buy now. No, it's not going to happen. And then lastly, they're all short of time. So unless you can really articulate what it is that you do in a very short space of time, you've got no chance. So I think there is a lot of obstacles there. I mean, there's other things as well, of course, but predominantly that's it. If you're going for customers, you just get on the phones and it's kissing frogs. You kiss enough frogs, you get a prince. Sure. If you want the high value ones, that really doesn't work so well. I mean, you will always get a story of someone that picked up a really big client from a cold call, but that is the exception, not the rule. And I think that, you know, it's important to recognize you've got to work hard to get them if you want them.
Sure. So Mike, before we get into, you know, what to do to overcome these obstacles, I mean, just broadly, what is the primary thing that you advocate in these, I guess, changed times from 10 and 20 years ago, where, it was a different world and there was a different way of nurturing relationships. What do you see as, the primary approach to building the relationships, I guess, to be there when the client wants you or needs you?
Okay. I'm going to answer that in two ways. In a second, I'll give you a formula that anyone can use, which will help you win high-value new clients.
Excellent.
And part of that is nurturing, right? Part of that is in there, right?
Okay.
And I'll go through that. But before I do that, let me just talk to you about what happened in days gone by. In the 80s, when I started, there were no laptops, there were no mobile phones, there was no internet. We had the telephone. You could send things through the post, and you could send faxes, but the faxes wasn't like A4 pieces of paper. It was like an enormous big English public school toilet roll, shiny toilet paper.
I remember.
Yeah. And you sent that through. And if you sent that, God knows if it would reach. So you normally would, if you got CVs, you would take them over and hand them over to someone, because that was the best way to get them across. So we had no technology, but the way in which everyone had a telex, but nobody knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone had a telex number. We had one in the company I worked for. No idea what that was. Anyway, so the way in which relationships were built cut away from the relationships in business. They're just relationships. Human beings depend on four things to build a relationship, right? And it's achieved through doing one thing. Four things is we want to be made to feel special.
Yeah.
Definitely. Not one of a crowd. That's why we hate cold callers, and that's why we hate, call centers, because they don't know. We're just a number, not a name.
Sure.
Number two, that we want to feel appreciated. We do something, whether that's just be a good client or whether that's do a favor, we want that recognized, even if it's only a thank you, or a box of chocolates at Christmas or something. But we want to be appreciated. We want to be understood, which is the most powerful thing. So if you've ever been speaking to someone, perhaps in a time of trouble, and you're sharing your troubles with someone, and they say something and you think, do you know what, they really get me. They understand what it's to be me now. That level of understanding creates such a bond with someone. It's almost unbreakable once you get to that level. And the third thing is trust. I might
just say on that point, I think one of the things I sense with a lot of people is they don't listen very well. So to get that deep connection with someone, you need to listen and really respond to the cues that they're giving out.
You do. I have a monthly webinar, and I interviewed a guy who used to be a hostage negotiator for the London Metropolitan Police, and he'd been all over the world, to Iraq, Iran, and loads of places to negotiate hostages. And he came on the show to talk about a thing called deep listening. And it's not active listening. We'll talk about that. This is a new level of listening, deep listening. And I was fascinated listening to him. I'd forgotten that I was interviewing. So I'm sitting there thinking, that's really good. And that's like, well, okay, ask another question now, Mike. Oh, yeah. Okay. Where's my notes? It was just fascinating. And the level that you can take listening to is enormous. And you're absolutely right. It's a key element of all of it. It's listening is the sales superpower, really.
Yeah.
But in terms of relationships, you've got those four different building blocks that anyone builds, with your friends and family and people at work. And the same with clients. You've got to build those. Now, how we did that in days gone by, we used to go and see people and have drinks with people and ring them up, that kind of thing. Well, it's still the same thing. Nothing's changed. People still want to feel special, appreciated, understood, and trusted. Yeah. It's just that now we have a whole bunch of technology and communication mechanisms available to us to make that easier. So you should still speak to people on the telephone. You should still go and see people. Well, we can't at the moment because we're in lockdown, but you should still do that. But now we've got this new layer on top.
Yes.
Where we can really get to somebody. Social media, particularly if you know how to use it, is just brilliant, because all relationships, all of them are built on interactions. If you don't interact with someone, and that can be, a telephone call, a visit, an exchange of texts, WhatsApp, whatever. But if you don't do that, eventually that relationship will deteriorate and die away.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't do so well coming back to extreme client care.
Yeah.
Because they don't interact unless they want something. And let's face it, come on. If you had a friend and all they did was when they rang you up, they wanted something, what would you think about that friend? I mean, really? And yet that's how we treat our clients.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll ring you up because I want something from them. You're not getting this, are you? You're not getting this, really.
Yeah.
And that's why there are very few really successful companies, because they don't get that, I think. But So in order to answer your question, I think the way in which I interact with people and And what I intend to try and do when I interact, which is those 4 things, hasn't changed at all and will never change. However, the mechanisms that we have to do that have changed a lot because of technology.
So the tools. It's interesting. There's a concept which I believe was developed by Google called ZMOT, zero moment of truth. And I think they talk about 14 touch points before clients are making decisions. And I think a lot of people believe you get very quick decisions. And I suspect on bigger transactions, you do need to put in the amount of care and touch points to build a trust and credibility.
Yeah, you do. And that's bringing me to the formula now, which I'm going to talk about.
Well, let's move on to the next question. So that's just getting back to the second question I asked you to identify the obstacles. I guess the next obvious question is, how do we overcome these obstacles?
Yeah. And that's the point of this talk, I suppose, to share with people how to do that. I think you made a very good point a moment ago, which I'm going to just pick on for a second because it's relevant to this. In that, if you're going to buy anything, there's 2 ways people buy things. They buy a renewal, so they go and buy what they bought before from the people they bought it before from, and there's selection. They go out to a selection of, so you're going to go and buy a car, just go and buy the same car you had before. You go and look at them. If you're going to go and buy a pot of coffee, you just go and get the usual coffee that you get, stick it in your supermarket trolley, right? And we have planned and unplanned purchases. So you basically got a grid with 4 boxes on it, okay? Yeah. Selective and renewal, planned and unplanned. Yeah. People buy things in different ways in those boxes, and you must understand how your clients buy things for starters. Yeah, sure. You must understand which of those boxes they mainly fall into, because that's going to shape the way in which you would approach them and sell to them. Yeah. Second thing is that most purchases, certainly planned purchases, and whether they're selective or renewals in many cases, if it's a big purchase, there's a thing called the pre-buying zone. So take the car metaphor again. Yeah. I'm going to buy a car, right? So for a month or 2 before that, I'm like looking at car magazines and I'm thinking about cars. And when I see a car advert on TV, I'm taking more interest in it. And when I'm looking on the internet maybe, and I'm taking an interest in it and beginning to think about what I want and what I'm supposed to do with it. And do I need a sports car, or would I look ridiculous because I'm old, whatever. And I'm also beginning to think of the brands as well. Do I want a BMW or do I want a Volkswagen or something? Let's call the pre-buying zone, PBZ. Yeah. Now, in the PBZ, people are open. They're open to ideas and thoughts and approaches, right? Yeah. After that, we go into the buying zone, which is much shorter. And I've made up my mind pretty much what I want. I've got a budget. I've got authorization if I'm working in a company, or from Mrs. Ames to go and do it if I'm at home. And I'm pretty much sure that the suppliers I'm going to use, right? So then I'm off. If you approach someone when they're in the buying zone, the chances of making some headways is less because people have already made the decision. Yeah, pretty much of who they're going to look at, and you're trying to come in Johnny come lately. You can do it, it's just not a great time to do it. Once that purchase has been done, it's pointless talking to them because they're just not interested. They're in the not interested zone. It's like, well, no, I've got my car now, talk to me in 3 years. And businesses go through the same buying process. Sure. So what you have to do is either be able to deduce the signs of people moving into the pre-buying zone, which you can do for certain purchases. Yeah. Or alternatively, you put a structure together, which I'm going to share with you now, where you can't predict when they're going to buy something, but if they do, they come to you, right? Because then it doesn't matter whether you've detected they're in the pre-buying zone or not. They're going to come to you if they need something, right? So, and it's a 7-step formula that you can use. It's dead simple. I'm going to go through it stage by stage, and then you will cover off. I think you want to talk about what you would say to someone when you.
In the next.
I'll include that in there as well. Here we go. Sure. So number 1 is you have to define your ideal client profile. Now, we talked about it earlier, so I'm not going to talk about it again. Yeah. But a lot of people say, well, I know what that is. So I just say, well, write it down then. That's fairly straightforward. And then what you need to do, that's easy, write it down, take it on a piece of paper and give it to the most junior person in your organization. Or if you're a one-man band, give it to your friend or husband or wife or partner or whatever, and say, go into LinkedIn and get me half a dozen people that look like that. Yeah. And let them loose. And then look at what they come back with. If it's pretty spot on, then your ICP is strong. It's good. You can tick that box and move on to stage 2. If it isn't, it's back to the drawing board, because the ICP has to be that good, because it gives you a consistency of client moving into your client estate. And also it makes you more scalable. because it's no longer dependent on the judgment or experience of an individual. It's now, no, these are the clients that we have, right? And I don't want to go any further into ICPs, because I could talk about them the whole session really, but what I would say is, if you want, you can actually weight the criterion within the ICP, give them a weighting, and then score them against that weighting. So some of the criteria are much more important than others. And then you add up the number, say it's out of 100, your scoring is out of 100, say. You add them up, and if it's above 70, you go for it. If it's between 50 and 70, well, okay, probably will. If it's below 50, not really that bothered, to be honest. So you can actually get really technical if you want to. And what that means is, as you grow your sales team, you can control the kind of clients that people focus on. And you can do that through the ICP. So that's step one. Step two is to define your proposition. And this is like a weird thing, because if you sell a service, then in many cases you are the proposition. So you got. I think of say a gymnasium, right? So a gym. I mean, as you can see from me, I know the listeners can't see me, but I'm a slave to the gym. Right, I'm there all the time. If you can see my nose going, I'm a real boy, Pinocchio. Right, I'm not, but I have been to the gym in the past. But if you go and you hire a personal trainer, right, so you're in the gym, but you have a personal trainer, you have a relationship with that personal trainer, and they're helping you. You begin to trust them, and what they're doing works for you, right? If they said, look, I'm going to another gym, or I'm going to set up on my own, chances are you'll go with them. The chances are, because you're buying the relationship, and that relationship is working. If, however, you go to the gym and you just go into one of the step classes, right, just go and someone's giving the step, you're in, you're doing the cycling or whatever they do, and then you come away. If someone swapped and someone new came in and did the step class, so what really? It's the step class I'm buying. And that's the difference between a service and a product. So what we're looking to do is move closer to being a product, because it's easier to sell. It's easier to defend your margins and your prices and your fees. If you've got people who've got less experience and less knowledge and less skills, it's easier for them to learn to sell a product than be the product. If we were competing and you've got 10 years recruitment experience and I've got 1 year, and we're pitching for a piece of work, chances are you're going to get it, right? Not me, because that's how it works, really. Well, you can move away from that and sell a product, and then the experience doesn't matter quite so much, because you're not buying me, you're buying that.
And that's more easy. Lastly, it's more easy to scale a business where you can
massively so. I mean, the whole raison d'etre for my business is to help people create scalable businesses. That's what we do. So that's why things like ICPs and productization is important. So, but for the formula, when I work with companies that go through my groups, you can't, a productization project can be 6 months long if you want it to be, if you're really going to produce something that's going to turn heads. But actually, you can do something really quickly, because you're going to articulate certain key pieces of information about what you do in such a way, and you have to test this until it works, that when you tell someone, they say, that's interesting, tell me more. If they don't say that, then you've got to go back to the drawing board. So proposition is really important, because there's going to come a point where someone says, okay, you got my attention, what have you got? And if you're a bit feeble and a bit wishy-washy and not well defined, you're going to lose out. You're not going to be successful, right? So second step is get that proposition sorted, get it right, test it with people, so that people genuinely say, no, that is interesting, I would like to know a little bit more about that. Nowhere near as hard as you might think, by the way. It's not that
Mike,
difficult to do.
When you talk of a proposition, is that the same concept as a hypothesis?
No, it's just a product to service. It's just a different way of saying product to service.
Okay,
Because if you sell products, your proposition is your product. If you sell services, it's offering. Offering isn't. You can say offering. That's another way. But you've got to be able to encapsulate it.
Sure.
So a 7-year-old can understand it, and you can deliver it in about 30 seconds. So, well, probably more than that. You probably get about 2 minutes. But the bottom line is, you have to have it that good, and it has to be polished. And what that does as well, makes you very confident. Because when you get in front of someone, you can do that. Now, the Americans had this term elevator pitch, which I absolutely loathe and detest. Because for starters, it's a lift. What's wrong with you people? And secondly, it's just ludicrous that doesn't work like that. But the concept behind it is valid. To be able to communicate key information about what you do to somebody, so they say, that's interesting. Yeah, come and tell me a bit more about that. Sure. So that's good. But you need to do the proposition. The third stage is this concept of an AIDA connection campaign. AIDA is you can Google it, AIDA. It's been around for years. It's like penicillin in the sales world. You can use it everywhere. can use it in a sales pitch. You can use it in a blog that you've written. You can use it when you're doing this kind of thing. You can use it in a pitch. You can use it in a campaign to connect with people. It's attention, interest, desire, action.
And is that something you've been using for years? This is not a new
God,
concept.
blimey, yeah. I mean, it was invented, I think, by, if you've seen a TV program in Australia, Mad Men, you know, the Madison Avenue advertisers. Well, there's a guy that spearheaded that, is an Englishman called David Ogilvy, and
yes, we know David Ogilvy.
It's just awesome guy, really. He's dead now, but man, you know, he's all these American kind of online retailers, they all refer to him every now and again. He's the granddaddy of it all. Well, I don't think he developed ADA. I think it was a lot before that. If you Google it, I think it was like the 20s or something, but he was a big advocate of it. So, and instead of trying to put everything into one communication, you know, which you can do if you're writing an email, for example, the whole thing would be in the email, but it's better to split it out. Do something to get attention, do something else to create interest, do something else to build desire over time, and then make the call to action very simple, very passive. Just take a call from me, just come on this event, you know, whatever it might be. So you need to build an ADA connection campaign. Now, we've got loads of those. It's like having a catalog. You choose one and we'll do it for you. But actually the easiest one, the cheapest one, because it's free, and I think the easiest one to refine and get it to work is based on LinkedIn. Okay, based in connections on LinkedIn, and then what you do when you're connected on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest one. But I think you've got to have some way to gain that attention. To be able to build interest. Well, okay, you got my attention. Well, oh, that's interesting. Now tell me more. And then the desire is where you're actually then shaping that person, not to sell to them, but for them to buy from you. And there's a world of difference between those two. So I think that's a really important step. Fourth step is what's called a content-based contact regime. Now, we know about content because you and I, we both publish. This is content. You know, this recording is content. The idea is to add value to people, to understand what they find important, add value to them. Right. Okay. So a contact regime simply means, and I haven't got time to go through this, it would be nice, but there's a 3-tier contact regime. So the top tier is every quarter you make direct contact with them. The second tier is every month you interact as best as you can on social media. And the third tier is something that they subscribe to, maybe a newsletter or a club or something, so that you can communicate, you know, every month religiously with a whole bunch of people. And what you're looking to do is what's called self-selection. So basically, they're moving into the pre-buying zone. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to pick that up and give you that head that they're, oh, wait, yes, they've just done that thing, which means that they're looking to begin to think about buying what I sell, right? So that's the point of and you can't do that. The old days, you just ring up and say, hey, it's Mike Ames here, you know, do you want to buy some contractors? You don't? I'll call you in 3 months. Those days are gone. You know, that's like you get a phone call. Hello? It's the 1980s. They want their selling regime back. You can't use that anymore, right? That is gone. So it's content now. And the problem with content is there's too much of it. So last year, have a guess, how much of an increase there was on content published on LinkedIn? Have a guess, go on.
20%.
60% increase in 2020.
In 1 year.
I know. So you can't just produce content. That's not good enough anymore. It was 4 or 5 years ago, but not now. You have to produce great content. But if you do that, what that means is you're engaging or interacting with someone about something that they're interested in, that they find useful, or thought-provoking, or just straight interesting sometimes, and not about the business. So they'll engage with you about that, and then you go away again until you do it again. So that's the fourth thing, and it's really important to recognize as well. I know we're running out of time, but I just want to mention this, is that this concept of the forgotten 45. So if you do an ADA campaign, and these are my numbers, they're not yours. Yours might be similar, but I can't guarantee it. If I go out with an ADA campaign that I've built and tested, so I haven't just done it, I've tested each stage with what's called a proofing group. A bunch of people out there are very similar to the people I'm targeting, and I've tested it and refined it. So I've got it, so I know it's going to work pretty much. Put that out there. What that does then is it gives me about 5%, between 1 and 5% of people who will want to talk. So they're not slam dunk, but that's interesting, Mike. In other words, I've caught them in the pre-buying zone, right? So oh, that's interesting, Mike. Yeah, come and talk to us about that, right? About 50% either don't engage, ignore us, won't talk to us, or you speak to them and they basically tell you in in very colourful language. I know you Australians don't swear. I get that, but if you did, you would learn some new swear words sometimes. They just go away and leave me alone, right? And that's fine. So the average kind of new business salesperson is ringing around looking for an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So the 5%, great. I've got something. Let me work on that. The 50%, well, all right then, clear off.
Yeah.
And then you got this 45% that we call the forgotten 45%. It's like, well,
okay.
I'm interested, but I don't want to buy it now for whatever reason.
Sure.
And yeah, and what the avid business developer, the end of the month warrior, says is the classes them the same as the 50%. They don't want to buy. Well, clear off then. On to the next. Big mistake, my friend, because just looking at the numbers, 5%, 45%. So there's potentially 9 times, 900% more revenue that you're just walking away from, right?
Yeah.
That you could land. And every month, a bit more of that 45% drops into the 5%, right? So
these are all people who you want to nurture because they're going to want to buy at some stage, and you've got to be available when they want to buy.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what you're doing is basically building up confidence. So the way you do that, you're communicating what you do, your capability, you're communicating your values because people like to know how you do things. You're communicating your credibility, that you're good at what you do. You're communicating USPs, right? All of these things. And at the same time, you're gathering information about them. You're gathering ICP information because you might realize they tell you something, you think, oh, actually, they're not as good a client as I thought they were going to be. I'll move them out. So you're going to do that. But you're also gathering information ready for the pitch, which I'll talk about in a minute, right? So the more data you gather, the better chances you have of converting this client, right? So you're doing this, waiting for them to drop. But there comes a point where, especially if you've used a LinkedIn to do this, where you have to be able to speak to them.
Sure.
Right. So, and the best way to do that in the modern world right now, the thing that's working for us, is an event.
Okay.
And it's going to be a webinar, which is a one-to-many broadcast live, or it's going to be a round table, which is much smaller. It's more intimate, 6 or 7 people in a meeting, like a Teams or a Zoom meeting where you can see who they are. If you can get someone to come to one of those, you've already moved in a big step forward.
Sure.
Because you know who they are, they've self-selected. They're going to be interacting with you. And if you can get them into a round table of some sort, and we do a lot of these things, then you're actually talking to them one-to-one. The chances of making a one-to-one phone call at the end of a deep dive workshop or round table is huge. If we were doing it now and I've just added loads of value to you for an hour, and then I'll say, can I give you a ring afterwards just to go through this? I don't think I've ever been turned down, quite frankly. So you're taking someone that didn't know who you were, connecting with them on LinkedIn, adding value for a period of time during this content regime through this ADA Connection campaign. Then at some point, there are some indicators, which I won't go through now, but there are ways that you can think, well, come on this thing, you'd love it. Seriously, come on this thing. From that, then you've got to get to what's called a discovery pitch. So that's stage 6, a discovery pitch. Now, I said, I don't sell to people, people buy from me, but it's very important that they know formally what I do. Now, you could argue that's a pitch, but I think it's only a pitch if you say at the end of it, and can we have your business, please? So what a discovery pitch meeting is, it's like saying, well, okay, we've been interacting quite a bit. You've come on some of the things that we've done. What I'd really like to do is have a set a meeting and really understand what it is that you do and to share with you what I do. That's it. Whether it's the right time or not, it's not for me to say. It's you. The definition of success? It's to keep doing the right things with the right people until it's the right time for them. And so that's the method that we're implementing here, really. So that discovery pitch is crucial because you're going to discover about them, they're going to discover about you. And oftentimes it does slip into a pitch, no question about it, really.
Sure.
And if it doesn't, then you go back to stage 4, back into the contact regime and start again and wait. And then eventually you run out of steam with them. In my case, it's 18 months. If I've done business with you 18 months, do you know what? We're not going to be doing business, right? So you're out of the process because I've got a load more people coming in the process. And then the last, stage 7, is that extreme client care. When you get them, you want to keep them.
We spoke about before.
So those, if you want to win and keep high value clients and make money from them, then it's those 7 stages that will do it for you every time, 100%. And I can guarantee it. Why? Because you do not give up until that formula works. It's like a computer program. How I started my career. You write it, you run it, it doesn't work. You debug it, you fix it, you run it again. It doesn't work somewhere else. You debug it, you fix it, you run it again. If you do that iteration, eventually you end up with a program that works.
Yes.
You implement it, anyone can use it.
Sure.
So it's the same with this formula. You keep going until you end up with a formula that gives you a conversion rate. So you'll know, if I put 100 people into this, I'm going to get 5 clients out of it. I know, because statistically that's what happens. Then you can just run it, Peter, and then you're good.
Mike, those are excellent guidelines. So 7 points, and yeah, I'm sure that many of our listeners will be able to draw some great value from them. Just wrapping up with one final question, if I may. If you could give the listeners just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, that's can I have 2 pieces of advice? Would that be too cheeky?
That's fine.
Okay. The first one is learn how to write really good content.
Yeah.
Well, not write. I mean, you can produce it. It can be like this. You're not writing this. We're speaking about it. So it can be a webinar series. It can be roundtable series. It can be podcasts. It can be a blog. It can be articles, long form LinkedIn post. It doesn't matter what it is, but write content that people want to read or engage with, listen to, watch.
Yeah.
And it's on a subject that's of interest or it's useful to them. Yeah. Because if you can do that, it changes everything. Sure. Everything changes. You could just produce great content. Never mind about the other 7 steps. Yeah. Just produce great content, put it out, and you will get a dribble of clients coming to you. Yeah. Because that's how it works, right? So that would be number one. Yeah. I think the second thing, and I'm torn here, so I'm going to go with work on your ADA. So no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with proposition. Yeah, there you go. You got the better of me. Get that proposition right. So you can communicate it in less than 2 minutes to a 7-year-old, and they say, "Oh, I get that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. Tell me more. I want to know a bit more about that." Yeah, that's what I would do because that's got most uses. Really, it's no good getting in front of somebody if you don't have something to say to them, is it?
No, exactly right. Mike, just finally. If anyone liked what you've had to say, and I think you've given us a great amount of invaluable information, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is through LinkedIn. Just invite me to connect on LinkedIn. We produce a lot of free content, as you would imagine. We do a monthly webinar. We've got a place people can go to, loads of free content, and we don't upsell. It's just a great place. You just register for it and you can become part of the club. A Pioneers Club, you can do that. We produce a lot of stuff that we put out on social media, videos, free micro courses that you can use, a whole bunch of different stuff. So just connect with me on LinkedIn. If you mention this podcast, that would be awesome. I'll know who you are. Yeah. And then just become part of my community and take what you want from me. It's yours.
And Mike, that's Ames, A-M-E-S. There's not many of you on LinkedIn?
Mike Ames. No, there isn't. There is Mike Ames, and I haven't got a flowery shirt on. I think I might be laughing actually on the picture on my LinkedIn. I don't know, but yes, there is only one, and it's Birmingham. I think it comes up as Birmingham on there. Flair. You can't. I mean, Mike Ames Flair. You can't go too far wrong. In fact, I think if you just put that into Google, actually, then I think I come out on LinkedIn at the top. Yeah.
Sure. Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on board today, flowery shirt and all. You've shared some absolute nuggets with us, and hopefully you get some inquiries, and I really appreciate your time. So this is
very welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me on. It was a really great time we've had. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. So this is Peter Crewe-Brown signing off from episode 2 of Mind Over Matters.